everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talking Politics here at The Hindu with me, Nistula Hebbar, where we unpack the news making the headlines in domestic politics. Last week was again newsy and packed with events. The Congress party hit the streets for 3 days in a row protesting the summons for questioning on its former President Rahul Gandhi by the Enforcement Directorate. The Delhi police denied permission for any protests on the streets, and tense, ugly face-offs occurred between them and protesters from the Congress at a point to the point where the Delhi police even entered the premises of the All India Congress Committee headquarters in New Delhi. Delegations of Congress MPs met with Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla protesting against the Delhi police's handling of members of parliament belonging to the Congress, specifically women members of parliament. While this was going on, the NDA and the opposition got busy with their respective consultation processes for finalizing a nominee from their camps for the post of President of India. Polls are scheduled for July 18th for this post, and the results are to be out by July 21st as notified by the Election Commission of India. The opposition group led by West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee had zeroed in on Nationalist Congress Party President Sharad Pawar, but since he declined, other names are being considered. On the NDA side, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and BJP President JP Nadda are trying to shore up support and even asking opposition leaders if they would like to suggest a candidate. Now, the way the exchange went, the opposition has, of course, with valid reasons, asked for the name of the NDA candidate to basically give an opinion. Basically, the opposition is saying that without a candidate, how can we proffer an opinion on the next president of India? Who should be the next president of India? So there is going to be an election, and the opposition group finally decided that they will be putting up a common candidate. There were, of course, certain parties which were missing from this opposition grouping, but more of that later. The big political event, however, was the announcement by Prime Minister Narendra Modi that he was giving a deadline of 18 months for central government ministers and departments to fill up 10 lakh jobs against vacancies there. And the announcement by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh of the Agnipath short service recruitment scheme for the armed forces aimed at recruiting 46,000 Agniveers, as they would be called, in the non-officer category. Now, the announcement by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the government jobs front was significant in two ways. One, that employment, a big challenge, political and economic, before the current government, was being sought to be addressed. It was acknowledged that this is a big challenge, despite the fact that electorally the BJP did not suffer. And secondly, that vacancies in government departments and ministries were to be filled within a certain deadline. And to this, the government could be held accountable. In terms of vacancies, as of March 2020, there were 8.8 lakh vacancies at various levels in government departments. This is just the central government. And while the pandemic had been a dampener in terms of recruitment, frequent leakage of exam papers for recruitment exams have led to political unrest. Most lately, during the campaign for the Uttar Pradesh Assembly elections, if you recall, when students preparing for exams to certain positions in the railways in Prayagraj came out in protest after the paper for that exam leaked, and they were lathi charged by the local police as well. This happened again in Patna. And therefore, the challenge before the government is not just that it's a massive number of recruitments that have to be done. Has to happen within a stipulated deadline, especially in a situation where the integrity of the recruitment process has been getting compromised. This was, however, nothing compared to the uproar that has ensued since Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, along with the three service chiefs, launched the Agnipath scheme. In this episode of Talking Politics, we will be largely looking at the Agnipath scheme and the furor, both in terms of street protests and political opposition that has erupted since. Well, let's just go to what this scheme is about. Well, this is a scheme wherein Jawans in the three services will be recruited for a short period of 4 years on a contractual basis, and of which 25%, that is 1 in 4, will be absorbed in the services as per merit for permanent employment. Enrollment to all three services will be through a centralized online system with special rallies and campus interviews at recognized technical institutes such as the Industrial Training Institutes, National Skills Qualification Framework, etc. Recruitment, according to the Defense Ministry, will be carried out on an all India, all class basis, with the eligibility age ranging from 17.5 to 21 years, with medical and physical fitness standards in accordance with existing norms. These recruits, termed Agniveers, will receive an annual package of about rupees 4.76 lakhs in the first year to rupees 6.92 lakhs in the fourth year. This would be apart from the risk and hardship and other allowances as applicable. As they leave the service after 4 years, if they've not been absorbed by the armed forces, under the Seva Nidhi package, they will receive about rupees 11.71 lakhs, including contribution and interest on completion of service. Recruits will have to contribute 30% of their emoluments while in service, with a matching contribution by the government. So all of this will amount to that 11,71,000 money that will be handed over to these Agniveers. There will be no entitlement to gratuity and pension benefits under the scheme. A non-contributory life insurance cover of rupees 48 lakh, however, will be available for the Agniveers during their service period. The Home Ministry has already announced that Agniveers will be given priority in recruitment for the central paramilitary forces once their stint is done. Several state governments like Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, etc. have also announced that Agniveers will be given preference while hiring for government jobs. Now, 46,000 Agniveers will be recruited in a process that will commence in 90 days. That is the bare bones of the scheme. The government's aim in terms of radically changing the way India recruits its soldiers is basically not just to reduce the average age of the Indian Armed Forces from 32 at present to 26 with this scheme. It is being hoped that this younger profile would make for a more agile fighting force, more at home with tech-driven modern warfare, etc. The government also points out that the short commissions in other countries that are in place to make its point that it is workable and that is the need of the hour, etc. The big relief for the government, however, would be the reduction of the pension burden of the armed forces. Soldiers can retire after 15 to 20 years of service and get pension, health, and other benefits for life, even if they get employed in other sectors. As of now, in the 2022-23 budget, the defense component was 5,25,166 crores, out of which pension amounted to 1,19,696 crores, that is 22%. This is a large component, and the government was trying to find ways and means of reducing its pension burdens here. Now, the government's announcement has, however, set off protests across various states, including Bihar, Telangana, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, and wherever there are heavy sort of recruitment centers for the armed forces. Young men hit the streets and have even burned down railway trains and damaged public property. This is in Bihar and in Secunderabad at the time of recording this episode of Talking Politics. What happens through the next few days, one never knows. Then the young people already upset that armed forces recruitments had been more or less on hold during the pandemic year. So 2 years there was an almost freeze on recruitment to the armed forces. It's a big avenue for employment in rural India. Young people try to prepare themselves mentally and physically to take the recruitment exams and big recruitment rallies that happen in the rural countryside. But for 2 years of the pandemic, this hasn't happened. So you have children or young people who are eligible getting already quite frustrated that they've not been able to make any headway in terms of their careers. They basically now resent the fact that what was a secure job earlier was now going to be made into a short-term sort of employment and morphed into a less desirable option, really. The government, in a move to quell protests among those who felt that they had missed out on the deadline age for recruitment because of the pandemic freeze, has raised the outer limit for the Agnipath scheme for a one-time relaxation of up to 23 years. It's the original Agnipath scheme has the age group for recruitment between 17 and a half years to 21 years. That has been, for a one-time relaxation, raised to 23 years. This hasn't stopped protests, however, and they have also acquired political color. Wayanad MP Mr. Rahul Gandhi tweeted that when India faces threats on two fronts, the uncalled for Agnipath scheme reduces the operational effectiveness of our armed forces. The BJP government must stop compromising on the dignity, traditions, valor, and discipline of our forces. Close quotes. BSP Chief Mayawati also spoke out against the scheme, and she said that the scheme was against rural youth who aspired for the security of a government job and pension. Interestingly, NDA ally, the Janata Dal United, which is in government with the BJP in Bihar, and where protests have been particularly acute with BJP MLAs and even Bihar Deputy Chief Minister Reenu Devi's home being attacked, has asked basically the centre, the JDU has asked the centre to re-examine the scheme. Captain Amrinder Singh, former Chief Minister of Punjab and NDA ally, he's a former serviceman also, he has also asked the government to re-examine the scheme. Now, what is it that other experts are also saying in terms of criticism of the scheme? On paper, it looks very good. So what could go wrong? Well, other experts have said that such short stints will have a detrimental effect on the morale of the fighting forces. After all, why would anyone only employed for 4 years want to face bullets in a tight spot in case war breaks out? Senior retired defense personnel said that this would also affect the esprit de corps of the defense forces, of the Paltan or the platoon. Many pointing out that the honor of the Paltan ki Izzat, played an outsized role in the fighting spirit of the Jawans, and that short engagements would not foster that spirit. Well, I rarely deal with issues related to defense, but this row has become fully political. After the BJP government had to step back on the farm laws, they had to pull back on the land acquisition laws, and the rules for CAA have still not been framed after a long standoff between the government and protesters. There is a very strong feeling that Agnipath could also go that way. Right now, the government is saying that it is not going to be rolling back the scheme at any point of time, but protests seem to be growing. The government needs to calm tempers down and kind of explain the process, etc. But what it also points out is that government employment, secure and pensionable, is a big aspiration among youth in these uncertain economic times when private jobs are not available or are not as attractive or as secure as government jobs can be. Every political party will have to address this aspiration if it wants to retain the support of the youth. 30 years after India began liberalizing its economy, it is still the government job that is an object of aspiration for the young. It is also clear that a big plank on the road to the 2024 polls will be jobs and the government's ability to generate them. This is all I have for you this week. Thank you for watching.